It is October, which means it's finally time to film my summer reading 2024. I've been planning this video for weeks. I finally got the chance to do it. I started filming, plugged in my microphone. I thought it wasn't charged, the battery levels weren't showing up. Plug it in, charging. I didn't put the battery in. I didn't put the battery in the micro. Anyways, here is my summer reading stack for 2024. I read 11 books spanning over 4 or 5 genres, from science fiction to memoir. I started reading manga. Today we are going to be talking about and reflecting on each of these reads. I'm going to tell you what books I most enjoyed this summer, what I would recommend to you, and we're going to recap summer reading 2024. I just want to give a quick disclaimer. Obviously, these are my own opinions on these books. Every writer is so incredible for, putting hours and months and years into these books, and I just have so much appreciation for that. We are kicking things off with a book that I think counts as my summer reading list, but I'm not quite sure because I finished it at the end of May. But I'm putting it on this list because I want to talk about it. I always want to talk about this book. Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World by Benjamin Alire Sáenz. I really hope that I said his name right. This is one of those books that every time I'm in a bookstore or a library, I always point it out. The first book in the series is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and that is now a movie. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to see it yet, but I am very excited about the developments that this series has made and has been given, because it really is a wonderful, wonderful story. So I've seen Jack Edwards read the back of his books when he describes them, but I'm just going to give a brief summary. So Aristotle and Dante discovers the secrets of the universe. We meet our two main characters, Aristotle, who goes by Ari, and Dante. Ari and Dante are two boys growing up in Texas, I believe around the 1980s. When Ari and Dante first meet, and when we as readers first meet them, they are in the middle of high school. And now in this book, they are preparing to graduate and enter a post-high school world. Together, they try to reconcile with essentially what it means to be a young man in an ever-changing world. This book is about family, it's about relationships, it's about hardships, and it's just a really heartfelt, wonderful story arc, told in a very interesting way. If you are interested in books that offer both a traditional narrative, first-person POV, plus letters and things along those lines, this is such a wonderful example of that. I would highly recommend this book. It's a really nice read, and it was a great way to kick off my summer reading. That brings me to the second book that I read this summer, Jonathan Unleashed by Meg Rossoff. Once again, hope I said that correctly. Jonathan has dreams of being a comic book artist, but he works in advertising, which he finds to be mundane and very repetitive. He has a rocky relationship with his girlfriend, and he's stuck in this box until he meets these two dogs. Upon meeting the dogs, Jonathan goes under a sort of psychological revolution where he ends up learning some lessons from the dogs' behavior as they navigate New York City, and as he learns to navigate his work life and his home life in a different way by confronting his challenges rather than giving into them. If I'm being honest, this wasn't my favorite book that I read this summer. This summer I've really been interested in science fiction and fantasy and things that really have a driving, constant sort of action-packed plot. This is very much a slice of life book. It is a day-to-day recount of average happenings, which is what's holding Jonathan back. My big qualm with this book was that Jonathan's dreams of being a comic book artist are instantly shut down by everyone he talks to, because apparently nobody makes money off of comics. As someone who keeps comics on the bookshelf and is an ultimate science fiction superhero nerd, I would beg to differ, and I definitely think that Jonathan should give it a try. But this book does have humor. I would read some more reviews before you read it, you know, because this is just my review. Not my favorite, but I did read it through, and it was an interesting read. Oh boy. So this summer I started reading the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I was gifted the first few books in the series and I absolutely fell in love with it. This book had me on the edge of my seat. Any moment I had a chance, I was picking this book up, reading it, shoving my nose in it, gasping. There were times when I had to put this book down and take a lap around the room, try and absorb what I just read. This book is a science fiction, dystopian, sort of utopian space opera, like, it's everything. The world of Red Rising is built around a color caste system, and the main character Darrow belongs to the red caste, which is the lowest in the system. Darrow lives on Mars, and his job is to mine helium underground for people who are coming from Earth to now inhabit Mars because Earth is dying. Darrow and the members of his caste live underground in addition to mining underground, and in not very good conditions. But one day, Darrow discovers that he's been living a lie. Mars has been long inhabited by the other castes, and it's his job to try and take it down. If you like science fiction, I will say this book is a little graphic, sometimes it's brutal, but Pierce Brown's writing is phenomenal. I've heard people say before that reading Red Rising has impacted the way that they view their own writing. I found myself to have a similar experience. I find this series to be a masterclass in how to write, especially in terms of science fiction, and I would highly recommend this book. Yeah, I fell quickly. I fell hard and I fell quickly for Red Rising. Next up on the list is Will Grayson, which is co-written by John Green and David Levithan. This book has been on my shelf for so long, but one of my goals this year has been to read the books that have been sitting on my shelf for a while. This one has a nice short little preview, so I'll read it. One cold night, in a most unlikely corner of Chicago, two strangers cross paths. Two teens with the same name, running in two very different circles, suddenly find their lives going in new and unexpected directions, culminating in heroic turns of heart and the most epic musical ever to grace the high school stage. This was a really fun book to read. It's an easy read, especially when you're reading Red Rising. It goes back and forth between the two Will Grayson's perspectives, first person POV, and the way that they wrote this book was really fascinating because there's such a stylistic separation between the two Will Graysons in addition to their personalities, their home lives, etc. One of the Will Graysons we meet writes, the average way, punctuation, capitalization, everything, whereas the second Will Grayson writes more in text speak, not using abbreviations, but there's no capitalizations, there's often text messages inserted, so it's a very different style of writing and it really distinguishes the two characters. It's John Green and David Levithan. I mean, do I need to say more? This cover is so fun. It's a notebook, and it shows the top, I believe, is the first Will Grayson, and then the bottom of the notebook, yes, is the second Will Grayson, and there's all these little Easter eggs that make sense as you read the book. Ooh, I'm excited to talk about this one. The next book I read is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrun. Me and author names today are not good. This is a book that I actually picked up from a BookTok recommendation, which I don't really do often. But The Charm Offensive is a takeoff on all of the the romance shows that we see on TV, the reality romance shows, in particular the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise, and it follows two characters here. Dev and Charlie. Dev is a producer and he works with the talent on the show, and Charlie is the newest featured contestant. So Charlie essentially is the bachelor. I believe they call it Prince Charming in this though. As Dev works with Charlie on and off camera, they get to know each other better and they form a connection. Essentially, this caught my attention on BookTok when they said it's the bachelor, but the bachelor falls in love with a producer instead of one of the contestants. This was a fun read. It's a really interesting take on all the stereotypical, TV, mass media produced love story sort of ideals. As someone who works in film and TV, it was interesting to get that perspective as well, to get the producing perspective, the camera perspective, all of that. This book has an interesting structure, I will say. It counts down to sort of like the final ceremony, the proposal, and takes you through the entire filming process from first meeting the contestants all the way to airing the show. There are times when it can feel long, and filming days are long. It's very realistic in that sense. It's not a super thick book, but I think it's something to definitely think about, what kind of timeline of a story arc you like before delving into this. But I found it to be a fun and memorable read. Alright, next up, anime. Manga. There's anime based on. I've had an interest in manga and anime for a while, so I finally got around to reading some this summer, and I started with Naruto. This is the Shonen Jump 3-in-1, so it's the first 3 volumes of the manga by Masashi Kishimoto. I probably pronounced that better than the English names. No one takes Naruto seriously at Ninja Academy, especially not the other students, who are all competing to be the best ninja ever and someday lead Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. Naruto and his classmates are about to embark on an adventure that takes them far beyond Ninja Academy, beyond Konoha, beyond anything they ever imagined. What is Naruto's true destiny? The epic story that has sold millions worldwide begins now. I loved this. This was such a fun read. A little sidebar, I am very much a parallel reader, so I will read 2 to 3 books at a time. This allows me to read 3 books at a time, and it's a really nice break from if I'm reading a heavy, science fiction book or something that has a lot going on, to be able to just look at these wonderful illustrations and the text. I would definitely recommend this as a first introduction to this style of writing, of art, and of manga. I enjoyed Naruto so much that I jumped right to my next manga, SpyxFamily by Tatsuya Endo. Just like Naruto, this was a really fun read, really enjoyable, and a really fun concept overall. As the title suggests, this is a series about a spy named Twilight. He has to form a family in order to embark on his next big mission. What he doesn't realize is that the woman he meets to be his wife is secretly an assassin, and the child they adopt is a telepath. So really fun dynamic, fun story, great illustrations, and I would definitely be interested in reading more volumes of it. Going back to novels, we have The Rise and Fall of a Theater Geek by Seth Rudetsky. You're going to notice a bit of a theme here between this, Will Grayson, and some of the other books that I have on this list, but I am very much a theater person. Seth Rudetsky is a big name in the theater community, and I was so excited to get to read this book of his. Once again, this is one of those books that I've had on the shelf for a while, and I finally got the chance to read it. Get ready, Broadway, for the one, the only, Justin Goldblatt. Justin knows his part. With his new single status, nothing and no one is holding him back. Justin knows his lines, helping TV celebrity Chase Hudson on his first Broadway show, best internship ever. But making it in the Big Apple is a tougher act than it looks like. Can Justin get his standing ovation, or will his time in the spotlight end up a total tragedy? This was one of the easier reads that I did this summer, but it was so much fun. There were lots of twists and turns, I was engaged the whole time, and it's overall just a really sweet book. It's a really nice homage to Broadway and to theater kids. This is very much relatable as someone who listened to tons and tons of cast recordings and obsessed over Broadway and dreamed about what it would be like, you know, to get into that life. If you are a theater fan, I would definitely recommend checking this book out because it's really nice. It's really wonderful. And like I said, really fun twists and turns. All right, next on the list is Beautiful Little Fools by Jillian Cantor. Now, the title Beautiful Little Fools might sound familiar if you are a fan of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, or even more so if you have listened to or seen The Great Gatsby musical on Broadway, where they have the song Beautiful Little Fool. For a long time, The Great Gatsby has been one of my favorite books, and what a wonderful time to be a Great Gatsby fan. We have 500 musical adaptations, play adaptations, and in the past year or so, I have discovered that there are also book spin-offs. If you are a Gatsby fan who enjoys murder mysteries, detective stories, this book is for you. Beautiful Little Fools picks up at the end of The Great Gatsby and attempts to reconcile with what really happened in its tragic ending. The three suspects in this incident are Daisy Buchanan, Jordan Paker, and Catherine McCoy, Myrtle's sister. This was such a fascinating read because what Jillian Cantor does is she builds the timeline from before World War I through meeting Gatsby and then picks it back up after the events of that summer that F. Scott Fitzgerald so wonderfully brings to life. And it really gets into the psychology of the three women and fleshes out their characters in such a fascinating way, while also having a murder mystery, you know, and a detective story. Next up, we have the memoir I read this summer, which was Anna Kendrick's Scrappy Little Nobody. This is another one of those books that's been on my shelf for a while. I originally picked it up because I knew Anna Kendrick from Pitch Perfect, and was interested in hearing more about her life growing up being on Broadway. And this absolutely discusses that and delves into it. I really enjoyed hearing about the behind the scenes as Anna worked to reconcile with growing up on Broadway, doing auditions, going into indie film, and then eventually making that pathway into works like Twilight that are more bigger and commercial. It was a fun read. She gives a lot, you know, of the psychological aspects of what it is to grow up, you know, in the entertainment industry and to have that draw to performing while also sharing personal stories. I also enjoyed hearing about the books that she read while on film sets, as she is also very much a reader. The last book of my summer reading 2024, nobody is surprised, it is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in the Red Rising series, and I was almost more attached to it than the first one. This was such a thrill to read. I did not want to put it down. I remember like trying to eat breakfast and read it at the same time, picking it up whenever I could, late nights reading. These books are so incredible. Golden Sun is a continuation of Darrow's journey as he has now infiltrated the caste system and must work to destroy it from the top down. Obviously, read Red Rising first if this sounds interesting, but read Red Rising. That's the lesson that came out of this stack of books. Is I can't even talk about this stuff. It's so exciting. And there we have it. My summer reading 2024. This stack is huge. I need to put it down. I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about books. If you want to see more, stick around, maybe even hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions about any of the books, parallel reading, how I managed to read this big stack over the summer, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you have anything else you want to see, let me know. And I gotta put these all back on my shelf now. Bye!